Hello you all. On today's video we're going to be introducing this character here from the video game. It's a horror video game called Dead by Daylight. This character here is called The Knight and he is prestige to a level 4. Once you get past this character here from this arrow, the artist, over, I don't like none of these characters pretty much all the way down. So we're getting into the characters that I don't like to play against or I don't like to play at all. But that's what he looks like on the killer chart. And this is how I have him dressed in his customizations. I play on this person's account. Let's go ahead and read his bio together. The Knight. Tarhos Kovacs didn't remember much about his childhood, but what he did remember, he would chase his entire life. He remembered the cries and the screams in the village. He remembered his mother forcing him to swallow a thick black fluid like medicine. He remembered collapsing to the hard floor only to awaken in a mass grave, buried under a crush of bodies, with the sound of the villages burning in his ears. He remembered pushing, pulling, and climbing to the top of the bloody mass only to be seized by the death, destruction, and silence, the indifferent and impenetrable silence. A high-pitched whine suddenly sounded in his ears, and his skin began to prickle as he realized he was in the presence of something he couldn't possibly understand. And though he couldn't articulate what he was experiencing, he knew it wasn't pain, grief, or fear. It was something else, something closer to awe. As Tarhos tried to make sense of the moment, he didn't notice the men who approached him from behind. He didn't even react when they carried him off to a horse-drawn buggy and locked him up in a small wooden cage with other slaves. He just stared at the scene, mesmerized, and even as they rode away, telling him he was headed for Italy, Tarhos stared through the wooden cracks with his eyes wide open and a heart wanting to understand what could not be understood. From that day on, Tarhos belonged to the Guardia Campagna, where he trained under Kader Hakimir. There he learned to wield weapons, forge armor, and recite a code of chivalry to obediently serve those who would employ his services. As the years passed, Tarhos made few friends amongst the hot hassle and competitive mercenaries, but his skill, strength, and smarts attracted a small following who believed his courage brought them luck in battle, and that one day he would help them earn their collective freedom. 3 of them followers pledged their undying allegiance to Tarhos and come to be known as his faithful 3, his pack. Agerdo Sanatargo, apprenticed with the Guardia Campagna's armory. Ducos Melodic showed an aptitude for stealth and silent skills. Sander Roth matched Tarhos in the size and strength, his weapon of choice a massive battle axe. As the Guardian Campagna carried out campaigns in faraway lands, Tarhos dispatched countless enemies. Years passed, blood flowed, and yet all that killing still didn't bring Tarhos closer to what he had experienced in his village. Nevertheless, for his bravery in battle, Tarhos was granted knighthood and freedom. The Hungarian slave was now liberated, his brutality rewarded, though his heart still longed for something else, something he could not name and or describe. Tired of taking orders from those he considered his inferiors, Tarhos left the Guardia Campania to strike out on his own. Their leader, however, refused to release his followers. Determined to raise enough gold to liberate his followers, Tarhos found employment with a wealthy Italian lord. Vittorio Toscanio was the Duke of Portucusco. He was also a scholar, a world traveler, and a collector of ancient knowledge that had been hidden by an unknown cabal of mystics. Tarhos joined Victoria's latest expedition to find a fragment of a pillar from an ancient school lost to time. A stone Victorio called the Lapis Paradis, for he believed it held secrets to open a gateway into a perfect world beyond good and evil. The expedition searched Roman ruins in France and crossed through Pyrenees Mountains into Spain, where the path led to the catacombs beneath the Portuguese city of Sintra. The citizens there considered the catacombs sacred. Tarhos would have to kill the villagers, guarding the entrance to retrieve the stone. Not wanting to shed blood, Victorio commanded Tarhos to find another way. But Tarhos, who had seen the most horrific acts committed under the guise of chivalry, refused to be dissolved by the pretenses of honor. He waited for Victorio to ride back to camp. Then, with a mighty roar, he pushed forward, cutting a path of blood and gore into the darkness until he had the stone in his grasp. Excuse me. Upon returning to the town of Portucusco, Tarhos imprisons Victorio in his own dungeon, demanding to know the meaning behind the symbols etched in the stone. When Victoria refused to talk, Tarhos brutally tortured his friends and relatives and made horrific displays of their bodies in the streets, but nothing he did shook Victorio's resolve to keep the secrets of the stone from Tarhos. Enraged, Tarhos seized control of Victorio's riches and raised a small army. Within months, Tarhos fiercely marched upon the Guardia Campania, declaiming their brackets, freeing his followers, cutting down his enemies like twigs, and collecting their righteous heads for his growing displays of valor. In time, several lords in neighboring provinces believed Tarhos was the very embodiment of evil. They banded together to create a moral and victorious army to purge evil from Portucusco. Tarhos ignored their threats. He viewed the lords as a cowardly lot who cloaked their greed and ambition in laws, code, and platitudes. Laws and codes and platitudes designed to hide from the very darkness Tarhos embraced and accepted without judgment. But with his enemies on the march, Tarhos headed toward the dungeons to give Victorio the death he deserved. He refused to afford him even the slightest hope of rescue. With dark intentions, he entered this small prison, wound his way into the bowels of the earth, and pushed through a torch-lit corridor. He hesitated for a moment, realizing he would never learn Victorio's knowledge and secrets, but neither would anyone else. That was good enough for him, and so he unlocked and kicked open the dungeon door. 2 quick strides brought him to an empty, rat-infested chamber. Tarhos stood silent for a moment. Then a roar of ignition burst out of his lungs as the sounds of battle suddenly reverberated through the town. Instantly, he stumbled through the corridor, rushed up the twisting stairs, vaulted out the moonlit doorway, and charged through the pools of gleaming blood and viscera, smashing and shattering his way through the enemy. The moral and victorious lords rained flaming boulders and tree trunks among the town, bursting through homes, crushing villages like worms, pounding the ground and igniting stacks of hay and piles of lumber into massive tongues of fire. Amidst the carnage and chaos, the pact found Tarhos, and back to back they became a whirlwind of death. Some believed their courage gave them luck. Others believed something overwhelmingly protected them. Whatever it was, they alone felled dozens of warriors as easily as stomping and crushing beetles, and as they butchered the enemy, Tarhos didn't notice the strange fog rising from the fallen corpses and clattering armor until he couldn't see 2 inches in front of him in any direction. Tarhos stumbled forward, groping in the thick fog like the dark fluid his mother forced down his throat as those years ago. His coordination and senses of direction was confused as he called out for his pack. How long he stumbled in the almost perfect darkness, he did not know, but suddenly the fog dissipated to reveal a phantasmal wasteland of rotting bodies and burning villages and a great crumbling towers leaning drunkenly on the horizon. He stared in awe. A familiar high-pitched whine sounded in his ears, and his skin began to prickle. He stood transfixed, realizing by some incredible chance his heart had found exactly what it had been searching for all his life. He didn't need Victorio. He didn't need the stone. He had found his paradise. He had found the beauty and the horror. He had found the sublime. Now that is the knight's bow. Let's go into his perks. A lot of people use this one here. It's called Nowhere to Hide. It's in the purple, so it's very rare. The machinations of the weak and craven draw your eerie, your anger forces survivors to reveal themselves. Whenever you damage a generator, reveal the aurora of all survivors standing within 24 meters of your position for 5 seconds. Out with you, cowards. Show yourselves, Tarhos Kovacs. His second perk is called Hex. It looks like that, and it's called Hex, Face the Darkness. Very rare because it's in the purple. You make an example of one of your victims, forcing their allies to become awed by your power. Injuring a survivor by any means lights a dull totem, activating the Hex. While the Hex is active, all other survivors outside of your terror radius and will scream every 25 seconds, revealing their positions and auroras for 2 seconds. When the survivor enters the dying state or broken healthy, the hex totem becomes dull again and this perk deactivates. If the hex totem is cleansed, this perk is permanently disabled. My bad. I shall make an example of one. These milling worms will never know peace. Tarhos Cavax. Now his last perk looks like this, and it's called Hybris. It's very rare because it's in the purple. You show no mercy, especially to those foolish enough to resist. Whenever you are stunned by a survivor, that survivor suffers from the exposed status effect for 30 seconds. Hybris has a cooldown of 20 seconds. Exposed survivors will be downed by basic attacks even if uninjured. You have made a grave mistake, standing in opposition to me this day, Tarhos Cavax. Now let's go into his customizations. He's got Cruel Champion, and it looks like that. He's got Jack-o'-lantern, and it looks like that. And then he's got the Knight, and I think that's the one that's on him, and it looks like that, the one he's wearing. Now let's go to his loadout. I really don't play the Knight or any killers that much, so I don't know much about him. I just know that I don't really enjoy him, playing against him or playing as him. It's just not a character that I enjoy playing. I enjoy playing Survivor more than I do Killer. So that's all his blood web looks like. So that's all the information we have on the Knight. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks. Bye-bye.